Hello, fellow traders. 'Tis I, the Rumpled One, coming to you Thursday, April the 15th, tax day. The year's 2021. Let's talk trading. Taking a loss versus losing, part 2 with Walmal. And this video, just like all my other videos, are for educational purposes only, and your results may differ from mine and different from Walmal. Walmal, I was saying how we need to talk to the boys and girls and non-binary traders about, what do you do after you have a loss on a trade? Because how do you stay unshaken? How do you stay on target and not get, distracted or emotional that might take you to add an indicator or go look for another system?
Well, I think number one thing is I don't go and risk more than I can go and stomach. And it may seem, obvious, but yeah, I mean, it's the type of thing where I had a mentor once tell me that, when you go and take a trade, don't risk any more than the amount of money you're willing to take. That amount of money, walk out into the middle of the street and set it on fire. And so, I think that's the number one thing. So if you take a loss, even if you take a full loss, it's not a big deal. The second thing for me is that, I'm cheap. I'll admit it. I'll say it right here in the public. I'll say it. I'm cheap. I'm one of these people that just, I'm always looking for the best deal. I'm one of these people that just doesn't want to go and get quote unquote cheated, And so, so what I'll do is if I see price move against me, in fact, I did this last hour where, price went against me. I took the trade, and it just went against me. And what did I do? I think I was on the phone with you when it happened. And it's like, okay, I was up a pip and a half, and turned around, and it just went against me. I said, you know what? This is just not going my way. I'm just going to go and get out of the trade. And I got out of the trade, and not only did I get out of the trade, but using a second method, a different method. It was the first trade was a Walmal, and it was actually this hour. I said last hour, it was actually this hour, and it was the break of the 90 line. And what happened was I was up like I said, a pip and a half, something like that. And then what happened was it didn't work out. And so I got a signal to go in the other direction. And so what I did was I took the signal in the other direction, and what I did was I went and just made up the amount of money for that trade. So because I lost, like I said, pip and a half, something like that, I went and just took the trade, and I think I got 3 pips on it. So I made up the pip and a half, and I made a pip and a half. And that's it's one of those things. The old expression, right? Keep your friends close, keep your enemies even closer. Well, I'm going to go and change it a little bit. It's like keep your profits close, keep your losses even closer. And by doing that, just making sure that you're never putting yourself into a drawdown. There have been situations. Before I learned to do that effectively, I would go, and next thing you know, I'm down a lot. I can been down 15, 20, 30 pips, and I'd risked, a ton of money on it. And it was like, until I learned to go and deal with that and say, first of all, I shouldn't be risking that many pips. Second of all, I shouldn't be risking that much money. And third of all, it was obvious. The trade went the other way. Get out of the trade. It's not working out. This is not what I expected the market to do. And if the market's not doing what you expected to do, why are you still in it? Do you really think that your little itty-bitty trade that's out there is going to go and change the mind of all the traders that are out there? Do you think, if we go and listen to order block people and imbalance bar people and all those folks, do you think your little itty-bitty trade out there is going to go and influence what the banks are doing and what the institutions are doing? Absolutely not. It's not going to happen. Get out of the trade. Just take a little nick, and you can move on. It's the type of thing. It's not about winning the battle, it's about winning the war.
Okay, but I was also asking about that psychology, because you take that loss. So do you have a different goal on your next trade after you take a loss, or you just try and get right back to your trading plan as is?
I go back into, if I go and see the trade develop and I say, okay, I really need to get into this, not that I really need to get into it, but if I see that a trade comes along, okay, and it's a good trade, And what I'll do is I'll cement in my mind, okay, all I want to do in this trade is go and take back what I just lost. And I do that. Now, I know a lot of folks will say that's crazy. Don't do that. You know, a lot of people probably a whole lot smarter than me say, no, if you're going to take the trade, go and take the trade for what it's actually worth. But I just look at it from perspective. I want to go and control my emotion. And so what I'll do is I'll get into the trade, and what will happen is if I'm up the amount that I just lost, and if price, just stops moving, I just get out. You know, I've accomplished my goal of just making back that loss, and I'll just wait for the next good trade to come along. Where I differ from that is if price goes and I make up what I lost, but price is still moving in my direction, yeah, I stay in the trade. But my first and foremost thing that comes to mind is make up what I lost, so I'm starting on an even plane. Because I'm always looking at it from the perspective of, if I end each hour at break even or positive, and I do that every single hour that I'm trading, at the end of the day, I'm going to be good. And that's the important part, is making sure you're good at the end of the day.
Maybe since you're a baseball player, you're thinking you're playing innings. You're 7 innings or 9 innings of trading. Is that it?
That's exactly right. You know, it's the type of thing, you know, and I don't care what sport you're talking about, but they're all that way, you know. The thing is, you know, talking baseball, you got 9 innings to go and play. You know, if you're playing football, you know, the thing is, if you get down in the first quarter, you know what? You got 3 more quarters to go. You know, and so what do? You play the game to get back to where you need to get back to. You know, and that's the idea. And it's sort of like, even in football, I know you like football. You know, it's sort of like, you know, this idea in football. It's also done in hockey, where at the end of the game, if you're up by a certain number of points, what do? You know, do you go and try to make more points? Nope, you don't. What you do is you play that game of Katie by the door, and the idea being, you know, that's an American expression for non-Americans, but the idea is that, well, I'm going to protect what I've got. And that's what I do, is I just, you know, I'll still take the trade, but I'm going to protect what I got. And if I give up a few points, I'll give up a few points, but I'm not going to give up the whole thing of what I've done for the day.
Yeah, exactly. That's like, the one thing I do is if I'm down, say 5 or 10 pips, and then as soon as I can get out with the pip, I usually do, because you know how good I am at buying at inflection points, meaning I'll buy, and the next thing you know, the trade will go against me. That was the old, you know, where I said if all I have to do is wait an hour, which, you know, that doesn't happen to me every time, but it's like when it does, I just have to laugh it off. It's like, how am I so good at that?
Yeah, and I think there's some practical thing about that too. You know, here's the reality. Let's say you went short at 90, you know, and price runs up, and the price comes back down to 90. Okay, now you can look at that as two different ways. You can look at it from the perspective of that. This is a point I can get out, just get out, break even, get out with maybe a pip or something like that. Or you can look at it from the perspective, hey, it gives me a second opportunity to get in a second time. But the thing is, if I'm going to get in a second time, and I do it, you know, but if I'm going to get in a second time, so now I'm in 2 trades at that point, I better make sure my money management's in place, and I better make sure that what I'm seeing on the chart gives me a good enough reason to get in at that point. It's not just because I'm back at that same price level. I'm back at that same price level, and all the other reasons that I would take that trade at there exist. And so I think you're right. Sometimes you look at that and say, I'm back here, I'm up a pip, I was down 5, 6, 7 pips, whatever it may have been, you know, maybe even 10 pips or 15 pips. You know what? It is time to get out, you know, and let's just get out now, because maybe it's just coming back down and testing that level again before it shoots back in the other direction. And I was just wrong. Well, I'd rather go and get up a pip or even down a pip, as opposed to being wrong by 10, 15 pips.
Yeah. Hey, let's switch the topic slightly. There's 2 things I want to point out. Right now, if you look at it, we're right around the last month's close and this month's open. Actually, there's a gap of about 0.5 between the 2 prices. And this is an inflection point here. So that was just one thing I just wanted to point out. At least on the pound, that's where we're at. And the other
that's
thing,
exactly.
yeah, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
Well, the
Finish
other,
your thought.
I was gonna say no. That was the thought. I was just letting everybody know where we are on the charts. We're also right around the daily pivot point too. Obviously, it's been filled. But you had mentioned before we got on the phone, you saying, "Hey, is it okay if I talk about something?" So I was gonna
Yeah,
let you bring that up. We've
yeah,
got about 4 minutes left in our 15.
sure. Well, I just wanted to go and point out today's range today is only 47 pips on the pound dollar. Okay, and I'm actually I said to you at that point in time that I was actually up 49 pips, for the day, and it sounds unreasonable. How can you be up 49 pips for the day and yet at the same time only have 47 pips? And the reason why is because you get so much travel during the day. It's the type of thing where you can go up, you can go down, and if you're playing the Walmal method, you can go and do that. Right before we started the call, I went short at 80. And the second point of that is that I went short at 80. It actually got me in at 79. I professed using a 10-5-1. Well, I was actually up 7 pips. Well, what happened was it then ran against me, and when I got to 5 pips, I said, you know what? Yeah, I didn't get to 10. But I was close enough, and I got to 7 pips, 8 pips, whatever it was. I just jumped out at 5 pips. Yeah, that takes me out of the trade, and I may not get the full 10 pips. But at the same time, if I would have stayed in that trade right now, I'd be at my opening price, or actually now even I'd be underwater. And I think that's important. That sometimes we have to realize, yeah, 10-5-1 is a great idea, and it works out a lot of times. In fact, there was a trader out on the Facebook page. He was able to get his 10 pips using that method this morning, and he had looked back, to like 1 or 2 hours before that, and they worked out, great for those other 2 hours prior to that. But the thing is, that doesn't happen every time, and so I look at it from the perspective, okay, I got 5 pips, I'm halfway there, and when I'm trying to go and play travel, that's the thing. I'm just going to go and try to pick up the pips on the travel. If I get 5 pips and, or rather I get 8 or 9 pips and it starts to go against me, and I'm now down being up like 5 pips, that means it's moved like 3 to 4 pips away from me. Well, maybe the market condition has changed. Maybe it's time to get out, and just go and take it. And that's how you can go and pick up a lot of pips, very quickly, not necessarily getting 10 pips. And I bring it up because I know there's been some discussion on, especially in the Facebook page, where people are saying, well, you don't get your 10 pips all the time. Yep, you don't get your 10 pips all the time. I got 8 pips, and the next thing you know, I got stopped out with +1. And I got stopped out at +1, and I got stopped out at +1. And you're absolutely right. If you're going to play 10-5-1 that way, that's what you're going to happen to you a lot of times. But if you're monitoring it, that's where you can make a lot of pips. Because if I'm monitoring it, and I'm up 8 pips, and it turns around, and I get back to 5 pips, okay, take your 5 pips. Be happy, and just come back next hour, or maybe you get a signal in the other direction, and you'd be good. Now, if I were to play 10-5-1 on that trade right now, I'd be down 7 pips. That'd be cool. Or actually, would have gotten out with +1. But potentially, if I didn't move my stop loss to +1, I would have gotten burned bad. So be smart. Play the travel. Watch the markets. And I said this yesterday, and I'll say it again today. And that is, you got to spend a lot of time sitting in front of the computer and watching the market. Maybe not even taking trades, just watching it, watching how it moves, learn how it breathes, and doing that will give you so much more skill. And we should be out of time at this point.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, fellow traders, losing versus taking a loss. Take those losses. Keep them small, but as Walmal said, at the end of the day, try and win at the end of each hour. Try to and be ahead at the end of the day, because it's not what you trade, it's how you trade it. So go out there and drain the banks. This is TheRumpledOne, over and out.